Welcome to the first session of the Gaiarcadia Summit, titled Awakening the Heart of Humanity. Before I introduce the 7 speakers, I want to say how delighted I am that it is opening this 2-day inaugural summit, which will feature world leaders of the emerging paradigm shift, consciousness, identity, and global cultures. As more than half of the speakers in the next session live in California, this time slot was the best option, given that the first session tomorrow has already been booked out for a 4-hour session titled Our Cosmic Journey to Gaia Self. 7 of the 8 speakers on tomorrow's session in the morning, first off, live in the Americas. It was only after the summit program was being settled that I became aware of how fortuitous it was that we began the summit with speakers focusing on the heart's intelligence, and the core coherent heart qualities of love, harmony, appreciation, compassion, and joy. I will leave it to the speakers to further discuss and explore why this is so important to us all now, so important to all of us now and in the future. The first speaker, Dr. Deborah Rozman, President and CEO of the HeartMath Institute, will lead us on a Gaian, Mother Earth or ecocentric guided meditation. The second speaker, the wonderful Howard Martin, co-founder of the HeartMath Institute, will speak on activating and awakening the global heart, and will be followed by the HeartMath Director of Research, Professor Rollin McCraty, speaking on the HeartMath's Global Coherence Initiative. These 2 awe-inspiring presentations will be followed by 2 Australian speakers, both recommended to me by Peter Story of the Macquarie Institute, located in Sydney, whose aim is to support and facilitate in Australia and New Zealand the HeartMath USA's worldwide mission, which is to facilitate a fundamental shift in health, well-being, and consciousness. The final 2 speakers have been meditation teachers since the early 70s. Sasha Ivanovich, a Buddhist, a friend, and a writer for Whole Life Times magazine, and Dr. Peter Russell, who in 1982 coined the term global brain. Peter Russell, President of Science Nonduality, featured in the pre-summit special edition of Whole Life Times in February 2024. The interview on which that article was based can be viewed on the Whole Life Times YouTube and the Gaiarcadian Patreon website. It can also be read on the wholelifetimes.org website under special editions. Today's session, along with the recordings of the other sessions of this weekend, will also be on those websites with linkages to them at gaiarcadia.org/summit/recordings. More information on each speaker in today's session and for the whole of the summit can be found at gaiarcadia.org/summit/bios. BIOS. I will now begin the session with a short introductory contribution. So I want to start with this quote from 1915 from Hazrat Inayat Khan, which I think it embodies a lot of what we're talking about on this weekend. And I'll speak it out so you can all hear it. toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. I wanted to honor all the great masters that have been on this planet, and Hazrat Inayat Khan was one of those. And he highlighted the importance of love and harmony. And as we'll see from some of the other speakers, such as Irvin Laszlo tonight, that love and harmony are the drivers of evolution on this planet, but also on the galaxy. Next slide. So jumping forward to a monumental era, and we all know this album with the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's. And these words were not from Sgt. Pepper's, which came out in May, but this one was a single that came out in June, released as a single. But on those words, we all know them, and I sort of summarized the chorus: love, love, love. All you need is love. All you need is love, love. Love is all you need. Well, it's not all we need, but as I said, it is the driver of evolution, because love is the highest expression of intelligence. And that's why in HeartMath we talk about heart intelligence, and of course we see the heart as the center of our loving. Now, two friends of mine who have been involved in the environmental movement for many, many years. One was a speaker on the climate panel, and he pulled out, and he gave an unacceptable reason, and so I quizzed him about it. And he said, well, he didn't want to be associated with all this loving woo stuff. And I said, like what? Well, like HeartMath, for example. And I said, well, you meditate, don't you? Yes, but I'm into hard science. Another friend of mine who's been very active in environment, I reminded him it was on. He said, yes, I got you a reminder, but it's not for me. I said, what do you mean? Well, I looked at the program and there's all this love stuff, love will change the world, I've heard it all before. And, I know this friend. He came to me about 20 years ago, deeply depressed about the environment. And I helped him through that. But it makes the point that this world creates an emotional response in us all, and that's healthy. And we all know about climate anxiety in the younger generation. And also, the Moody Blues song was angry people on the street of telling the politicians they've had a gutful. It was back in 1972. Angry people on the street. Fearful people on the street. And these words, in 1972, I was at uni, and one of the lecturers came in and showed a slideshow, and it started with these words. I woke up today, I was crying, lost in a lost world. So many people are dying, lost in a lost world. Everywhere you go, you see them searching. Everywhere you turn, you feel the pain. Everyone is looking for the answers. Well, look again. Come on, my friend. Love will find us in the end. Oh, can you see the world pining for someone who cares enough to share his love with all of us so we can be an ever-loving family? Now, that was the Moody Blues in 1972. And, we've had decades of fear, anger, pain, war. And in all of that, we have to maintain ourselves, our emotions. And HeartMath, as you'll learn, is not woo. It's based in science, the science of the heart. And we all feel fear and anxiety, depression. We feel it in our emotions, and the heart is the heart of our emotions. It's also the heart of our loving. This is the little poem that I wrote, and it's a little an extract of it. The first slide I showed was of a Sufi master, Hazrat Inayat Khan, and I was initiated into that Sufi order long ago. So these words were meant for me. But just to explain, Yahai means O ever living. Yahu means divine breath. And as we'll see tonight with Jude Curvin, who's a cosmologist, she said she doesn't like the word the Big Bang. She prefers it as a breathing into existence, which is more akin with the Hindu breath of Brahma. And so my little poem, Awakener of the Heart's Intelligence, O ever-living eternal breath, O cosmic divine presence, O abiding guiding truth, enabler of the great upshift, which is the name of tonight's session, Humanity's Great Upshift, which is the name of, based around the name of Erwin Laszlo's book. O heart of Gaia, O beloved friend, Namaste, Namaste. Gaia stay, Gaia stay. Namaste, Gaia stay. Gaia stay, Namaste. So I'm going to stop it there. Before I introduce the first speaker, I would like to say, in selecting the speakers for this summit, especially given its focus on Gaia, the Mother Earth goddess of ancient Greece, I was aware of the need to strive for gender balance, and I am pleased that this was achieved in this first session. Beautifully, our first speaker, Dr. Deborah Rozman, of her own accord selected a guided meditation in perfect alignment with the overall theme of the summit, and I am very pleased, grateful, and appreciative to her for this wise choice.
So you let me know when we want to start the heart meditation.
You can start right now, Deborah.
All right. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. And I'm going to share with you the HeartMath Institute Global Coherence Initiative Full Moon Synchronized, what we call Care Focus Heart Meditation, that we always release a few days before and after the full moon, where we all do it together and just add a lot of heart energy to each other and to the field environment, which Rollin, I'm sure, will be talking about. All right, so let's all focus our attention in the area of the heart.
Also on the screen.
Center in the heart and breathe love and appreciation. This warms our heart and increases the coherence in our heart's intention. Just breathe easily and imagine with each breath that your mind, emotions, and body are becoming still inside. This helps with focus Now visualize more of humanity connecting with their heart's love, kindness, compassion, and respect in their interactions, to reduce separation and draw in new solutions that serve the greater whole.
We see a different screen to you.
As the collective heart awakens, this can eventually transform the civil unrest from separation and clear the way for people to get along with each other. A first step toward creating a better and more harmonious world. Now let's radiate our inclusive love and compassion to all who are suffering throughout this planet from wars, famine, and many other hardships. Include animals, plants, and all living beings in your compassionate care. Thank you for sharing that heart coherent meditation with me.
Thank you, Deborah. And we could be doing that every day, couldn't we?
We could.
Yes. Yes. Welcome, Howard. Good to see you on the screen. Let me, do you want to introduce Howard, Deborah? You seem to know this person.
I seem to know him. Yeah, I sure will. Howard Martin is Executive Vice President of HeartMath Incorporated, and he is a co-author of the HeartMath Solution and the book Heart Intelligence, Connecting with the Heart's Intuitive Guidance for Effective Choices and Solutions. He is a HeartMath leader and speaker all around the world about heart intelligence, and he just happens to be my husband.
And a
Welcome.
beautiful husband you have.
I will be talking for a few minutes now about the subject you asked me to speak to, which is awakening the heart of humanity, right? It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Thank you very much for that. I'm in a remote location today, which is why it looks a little different. I'm in a recording studio in Santa Cruz, California. And as I look at my own picture on the screen, I see these cool light rays coming down in this studio room that I'm in. So that's what's happening. I hope my sound is okay as well. So it's a privilege, the opportunity to be with you, Dennis. I do remember you from many, many years ago on my very first trip to Australia at a very important time in human history. It was right after 9/11. And I was on the first plane that left San Francisco internationally to get down there to do those programs. And it was obviously a very instrumental and important turning point in the history of our world. We're certainly at many of those inflection points today, are we not, with all that's happening in the world today? And I think one of the things we have to realize is we see the chaos, we see the confusion, we see the suffering, we see all of that. But that there is a major significant movement going on in the world today where many, many people all around the world are becoming more, let's just call it awake, more conscious, making different choices in their life, desiring something different and contributing to not only the betterment of themselves, but to the betterment of humanity and to the world itself. To me, that's one of the most important aspects of this time period, is not just the chaos and the confusion and the problems, but also the awakening that's happening. One of the primary missions of HeartMath that we've been engaged in for these 30 some years is trying to help awaken the heart of humanity itself. And so what would that mean? Well, I believe that everybody deep down inside somewhere, no matter what, has a good heart. They have this aspect of themselves where their higher dignity comes from, where the emotions of love, care, kindness, compassion, appreciation, all of those type of emotions are birthed from. They have this place inside that offers them self-security. It offers them guidance and direction in making the choices that they need to make in life, big and small. Everybody has that. Everybody has that capacity. Unfortunately, many people are just not as connected to that as they need to be. Through the process of life, through the ups and downs of life, through the learning that they get in various different ways, very often people lose that connection and they begin to live life just from the neck up, so to speak. And they lose the connection to something innate and beautiful that they deserve to have. Now, through the work that we do, not just our work, through the work of many people and organizations and all the great work that I'm sure many of you do who are on this program today, people are becoming at times more connected to this part of themselves. At HeartMath, we've done it through providing training through tools and techniques and methods and technology we've developed, all underpinned with wonderful scientific research, which Dr. Rollin McCraty, who's going to speak after me, will speak to that, and to more, I'm sure. But that whole system is put together for one thing. It's put together to help people connect with something they already have, help people connect with that part of themselves that we call heart intelligence. As people do that, they find that sense of self-security, even in the midst of the problematic world we live in. Think about it. I mean, that's a place people turn to sort of naturally to find that. When life gets tough at times and we don't have solutions that we can come up with from our, let's say, logical, linear intelligence, people will dig a little deeper. And they do it in different ways. They pray, they meditate, they take a walk in the forest or on the beach, or they get in their car and they drive off into the night, and they begin to pull a little deeper within themselves. And as they do, sometimes different, more hopeful perspectives begin to emerge. And that is simply someone, however they do it, that's making the effort to reconnect with that part of themselves that we call heart. And that's just one of the benefits of accessing more of that part of ourselves. The intelligence of the heart, to me, I mentioned it earlier, is the place that sort of births some of these emotional qualities that are the most beneficial to us, the most fulfilling to us. And they include some that I mentioned, but more, like appreciation. I love the feeling of appreciation. Appreciation is like this wonderful energy. It's like the bubbles when you open a bottle of sparkling water or champagne that sort of give life a bit more effervescence. And through the eyes of appreciation, the lens of appreciation, we see things differently. Through the eyes of the problematic side of ourselves, we see the limitations. Through appreciation, we see more hopeful, more wide-angle views and possibilities available to us. Not only that, appreciation is the kind of emotional energy that's magnetic. It draws to us more fulfilling experiences. I've often thought about, having peace in life, and people would say, I just want more peace in my life. And one of the things that I realized along the way was I couldn't really have the peace in life that I wanted without first walking through the doors of appreciation for the life that I have right now. And that's just one of a spectrum. I could talk about a lot of the emotional qualities of the heart, like care and like compassion, these wonderful, regenerative, uplifting feelings and emotions. To me, the heart is the birthplace of that. There's also what we call a lot of times at HeartMath, or we refer to it in this way, don't call it that, but more of the spiritual side of heart. And that would be the connection that our heart's intelligence gives us to something larger than our ordinary selves. So that larger self that we access, that higher dimensional self in a certain way of who we truly are. And when we connect with that part of ourselves, that's when we get a lot smarter. That's when we begin more intuitive direction and guidance to be able to see into things a little differently and to navigate whatever comes up in life in a different kind of way. And these are just some of the qualities that to me are associated with heart. Now, when we are able to make that connection a bit deeper and to grow it more and more over time, life will get better. Our challenges may still be there, but we'll be meeting those challenges from a different place and different space. And a lot of the challenges can be overcome. We find solutions to those challenges, and we begin to magnetize a life that has more of the feeling of fulfillment in it, and purpose and meaning that we want in life. Now, when we're there, we act differently. We treat each other differently. We treat ourselves differently. We connect with others in a unique and different way. And we connect with the game of life itself in a different way. So now, what if we awaken that in more people? Awakening the heart of humanity. What kind of a world would we be creating and would we have in the future, not too distant future, but in the future itself, a bit longer term down the road, if we were to have more of an awakened heart in the humanity? Think about that. It would be a very different world. Awakening the heart of humanity is a theme that Dennis has chosen to open this whole major 2-day event with all kinds of wonderful speakers talking about different subjects and aspects of the life that we have today. He's chosen to let this be the beginning of awakening the heart of humanity. If we do that, so many of the other things that I think we want in our lives and in the world can begin to come easier. And we begin to sort of co-create with consciousness itself to reshape how the world functions, how people think, how they feel, how systems operate, how systems influence humanity. And that filters itself out into how we actually interact with the earth itself. How do we get to a point where we're not fighting with nature, where there's not a battle going on between us and what we do in nature, and then nature having to respond to that? How do we get past all that? We do it through activation of more of the qualities of the heart. So activating the heart of humanity is, to me, part of the, I'll call it the evolutionary imperative of our time. And it is actually happening. I'm talking about it today from a conceptual framework, but I see it and I feel it. And I see it all around the world. And it crosses all the barriers. It has nothing to do with educational background or where someone lives or what they do for a living or their gender or their race. None of that. It activates within all people. And I see it happening in the world today. It's a very hopeful picture that I have of what's going on in the world today. Now, it's obvious that we have some harder roads that we have to walk as the emergence of a new world continues to unfold. It's just the way things have to go down right now to get more people to awaken. And so to me, the service that we all provide, that we can provide more, is doing everything that we can to keep that part of ourselves awakened and to grow it. Because how we walk in the world, what we emanate into the world and into the field of consciousness, even if it appears small, is actually a big, important service. It's influencing the field and making it easier for other people to naturally begin to think and live that way. So the biggest service we can do is really to work on ourselves. So an important question that I try to ask, and I would suggest it's not a bad question for anyone to ask, what can I do next to grow that within me? Yes, I've been doing this for a really long time, but there's more. And what do I need to do differently now? What attitudes do I need to change? What behaviors do I need to stop? You know, what areas of my life that I've looked at before but haven't completed out on that I need to take a deeper look at now? How can I apply more meaningfulness to the work that I've been doing for so many years to take certain things now to a feeling of completion? If I make that my priority, that sort of informs my service mission. It helps define my true purpose. And to me, it's the most important contribution I can make to anything. So yeah, I get to do some interesting things, help to write some books and traveled around the world speaking some. And now I'm in this recording studio, recording some things that we have going into the new HeartMath app. So there's some stuff that comes to me as a result of that can be looked at as the purpose and the mission. And they are wonderful additions to that purpose and mission. But the real purpose and mission is me changing me cracking the code of consciousness within myself. As I do that, that's going to make it easier for other people. And that's the main thing that I focus on. Another reason to do it is that we all have intentions about the better world. And there are programs like this one where people come together from around the world. We can do it virtually now. And there are meditations like Deborah led, which are wonderful. And there'll be more within the context of this program. And we're putting out certain types of feelings or love or intention as we do that. As we continue to refine in ourselves, our radiational capacity and efficiency increases. Meaning that those meditations start to even count more. They have more helpful influence in the world today because we have changed. We are more radiational. We have a greater capacity to co-create the new world we all want to see. Now, the last thing I'll say about it is that it's a wonderful time to be in existence. And as hard as it is at times, we are in such a unique position to be able to help the world at this time period move through a transitional phase. What a gift. It's not a passive life by any means. Change is happening as fast as, and sometimes faster than, we can keep up with it. The progression, the evolution, the growth, the acceleration, it's all there in our lifetime. And I do believe that in our lifetimes, not only have we already seen some evidence of change, we will see even more. Think about that. What a fulfilling part of life that will be, to be able to see in life the changes that we've all envisioned within ourselves. Now, this can happen quicker or slower depending upon what we do. A lot has to happen, a lot's not within our control. But there are a couple of things that we do have a lot of influence over. We have some influence over how long or how short a time it takes to see major shifts and change in the world. And we do have some influence over how kind and gentle that process can be. We can help with any and all of that as we do. The best way to help beyond working on ourselves, the next phase after working on ourselves, is to come together. I'm sure Rollin's going to speak to this as well, because I know it's one of the things that's most important to him. But at HeartMath, we have a founder named Doc Schuldry, and he laid out a very simple phrase not long ago that relates to everything I've talked about. He said, the next step in the world, the next step from manifesting all these wonderful things, it comes down to one thing. It's learning how to get along better. How do we get along better? How do we dissolve some of the separation, first of all, we have within ourselves, the discord within ourselves about who we think we are or not and all those things. Let that go. Then how do we come together as people? We have to learn to use the power of our hearts to cut through the density of the separations, the judgments, the divide that we have. And there's only one way I know of to do that, and that's through love. As we love more, it will help dissolve separation, biases, and judgments. It will cause an opening of a desire for connection, collaboration, and cooperation. And as that increases, you watch, the world will begin to shift. The world will begin to change. So I guess the punchline to what I'm saying is, let's just learn to love more. The rest will take care of itself. And that's basically about all I think I should say or have to say today about this subject. But I'm excited that Dennis and his organization have put this together and doing everything they can to help awaken the heart of humanity. And I'm also honored to have had a small part in it all. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, Howard, so much. I am really honored to have you give that presentation. And I'm so glad that we're able to record it because, you know, we want this to get out to as many people as possible, this message.
Well, unfortunately, I do have to go and get back to this recording studio thing, but
Yes,
let me do Roland's introduction, and then I'll leave.
Yes,
Many
okay.
probably know Roland. He's a man of many talents. He has been the director of research at HeartMath Institute for many, many years, and a lot of the research that he and his people have done has become really important. It covers a wide spectrum of subject matters these days. But when I think about one of the most important parts of the research that started many years ago, now over 30 years, it's helping to redefine even what the physical heart was doing, you know, of its importance in the way in which it was communicating with us, with the brain and the rest of the body. It began to open up a whole new world of possibility because that one body of research was confirming to what people had felt already inside, that the understanding of heart was more than a metaphor. And there was a solid underpinning of science to support that. His research has gone on further and further into many other subjects I'll let him speak to. He also does other things that you would not believe that are unrelated at all to scientific research. He's actually really good at driving heavy equipment, bulldozers and all that other kind of stuff, and tractors. He's good at that too. So Roland's a man of many talents. He's been a friend of mine and a colleague for many, many years now. And so I'm going to leave and turn this over to Roland and let him have an opportunity to share his knowledge and wisdom with all of you. And I hope this is a great conference. Again, Dennis, team, thank you so much. I wish you all the very best, and I hope that you'll take care of yourself and that you'll especially take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Howard. Appreciate that. That different introduction. All right. I'm going to try and do a very high-level overview of 30-some years of research in 20 minutes. And we'll see where we go. And okay, so I titled this "How Love Connects Us: The Science of Heart Coherence." And so coherence is a term I think most people are intuitively have an understanding of. And okay, so coherence, in physics or science is a concept and a term that's used from the very small to the scale of the universe. And it's a term that is really used to describe the harmonious behavior of these parts of a larger system. It's probably the most common way we would use that term. So in a coherent system, it means that all those parts are working together. And we can talk about, well, I'll get into that in the next slide, coherence at many different scales. But if you're in a coherent operating system, it means that the parts are working together harmoniously. But for that to happen, there has to be some type of a connection between the parts. So you think of the human body, the levels of scale that has to be connected from the very small, from the subatomic, really all the way up to atoms, to molecules, to organs working together. And, that all those have to be cohered in a global coherence. And another aspect of coherence is stability within that system and efficient use of energy. And another key concept, I think, whenever we talk about coherence, is implied in that this type of a meaning is that the wholeness or the output we could think of in certain contexts is greater than the sum of the parts. Okay, so that's what we would mean by coherence. And we were some of the first to use that term in a way in terms of physiological processes. So our research spans many different areas or spheres of coherence. Many years of our work was on personal coherence, individual, what's going on in our body, and so on, and when we're coherent or not coherent, and how that relates to the emotions we're experiencing and our behaviors and these types of things. Also, we look at coherence in terms of our relationships. And this could be a family, it could be a leadership team, a sports team, work team, whatever. And so how harmonious are those relationships within that group, within that social group? We've developed new measures of that, both physiologically and the ways we can measure team coherence as well. And then global, what's the harmonious behavior of us globally as global citizens? But also, which I will speak to more today, be more focused on the global, the relationships and energetic interactions between us, as cells in a greater whole you could think of, and the earth itself, the rhythms and frequencies of the earth. So I'll just cover very briefly some personal coherence related aspects. And, the second statement on this slide, that the heart sends more information to the brain than the other way around, sounds like some new discovery oftentimes, but it's not. This has been known since the late 1800s. And this is a basic anatomy. The heart sends far more information upstairs to the brain in our head than the other way around. And in fact, even the field of psychology was based on this knowledge in the late 1880s up until the 1930s or so. And then a lot of information, kind of the pendulum swung, and a lot of rediscovery had to go on, in fact, in science. And in the 1970s, which is the bottom statement here, it was kind of started the pendulum swinging back the other way when it was observed that the heart was acting like it has a mind of its own, in fact. And not only that the neural signals that was being sent from the heart to the brain had profound effects on brain function and our perception, and helping create our experience of emotions. Had very much to do with what the heart was doing and the types of information it was sending. Affects our cognitive abilities, our ability to self-regulate, these types of things. And there's literally hundreds of papers on this over the years to map out and understand all the mechanisms. But at that time in the 70s, what they didn't know, there was a bit of a mystery of why and how the heart was doing this. In fact, even then they were observing that the heart somehow knew ahead of time what the next thing the brain needed to do. That's actually in their data. They didn't talk a lot about it, but it was clearly there. What they didn't know then, and this came later, really kind of exploded more in the 1990s, early 90s and onward, is the field of neurocardiology, which has to do with our top statement here, that the heart has its own complex nervous system. It's nicknamed the heart brain. Technically, it's called the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. So there's a very complex and rich neural system within the heart. And these neurons in the heart have been proven now, this is not a theory, to have short-term memory, long-term memory, neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, and the way they're all wired together to truly say it's a functional, it can act as an independent functional brain. And that's what's sending all this information upstairs. Now, I'm going to skip a whole lot of science here and just say that one of the tools we have to understand the dynamics that are going on in this communication between the heart and brain, this two-way dialogue, and the activity within our autonomic nervous system is called heart rate variability, or more simply, you can think of it as our heart rhythms. And that's what we're looking at here, has to do with the beat-to-beat change in heart rate, which is a natural thing that's always going on. And on the left, and these two graphs you see are from the same person. On the left, this is what our heart rhythm tends to look like when we are experiencing emotions like frustration or anxiety, irritation, impatience, these types of feelings. And you can see that it's kind of a jerky, erratic, what we call incoherent rhythm. Now, this is important because it's a neat, non-invasive way to understand a lot of what's going on inside of our brain and nervous system. And so this reflects that the activity in our higher brain system is literally out of sync. And it is kind of the rhythm that's associated with a term that was coined back in the 70s, not by me, but called cortical inhibition, meaning our cortex, the higher part of our brain, is inhibited. We don't think as clearly. Our reaction times are affected, and coordination, these types of things in a negative way. The rhythm on the right, again, this is the same person when we ask them in this case to experience a feeling of appreciation in this particular case. And I use this example. We've had hundreds just like it because this was actually the first study published in the American Journal of Cardiology that linked emotions to heart rhythm patterns. And so what this is showing us is when we have those heartfelt feelings, I'll call them, of appreciation. And that can be really simple. It can be like you walk out the door in the morning of your home, and it's just one of those gorgeous days, right? Blue skies and the right temperature. You just kind of go, oh God, what a beautiful day. Well, you're feeling appreciation or awe. You know, you may not think that or say that to yourself, but that feeling takes us into this kind of a coherent, a more ordered, more beneficial rhythm, heart rhythm. So this is what we naturally, the heart is beating out this rhythm when we're feeling appreciation or compassion or kindness, these types of feelings. We're really more coherent. And this is associated with the term, again, coined back in the 70s, called cortical facilitation. We think clearer. We're more focused. Well, we just feel better. It's that natural rhythm that's associated with that. So, and this is a rhythm, a coherent state, and a lot of what the HeartMath techniques are really do when you use them is help us shift from incoherence to coherent. And there are over 500 independent studies now that show the benefit of coherence training or learning these practices in everything from improved health, lowered blood pressure, better hormonal balance, to increased performance, test scores in kids and schools, and so on in many different contexts and cultures around the world. So I'm not going to go into all of that, just knowing that coherence is a good thing. We want to learn how to make that shift, especially in the moment. And just one other comment here is not to confuse a coherent state with relaxation. Of course, relaxation is a good skill. We always want to have that and be able to relax when it's time to relax. But coherence is something different. It's a measure of the synchronized activity within our brain and nervous system and the synchronized activity between the heart and brain. And with practice, you can be in a coherent or an incoherent state as far as that goes at almost any heart rate. So this is why this is very relevant for athletes or first responders or people that, where you need a higher heart rate, but you want to be coherent. You want to be composed, able to make quick and accurate decisions in the heat of the moment, so to speak. So that's why HeartMath is so popular in a lot of the first responder, law enforcement, athletic communities. Okay, so one of the things that we kept hearing from, and still do to this day, from people who practice these coherence building techniques, is their intuition was on steroids. A noticeable difference, not subtle. And then the second thing they usually say is that synchronicities have become a way of life. It's just a radical change. So we figured out a way to bring that into the lab in very rigorous studies. And I'm not going to go into all the details because of time here. This is all published in peer-reviewed journals. For those that want the gory details, you can go to the heartmath.org website in the research library, and these papers are all, actually hundreds of papers there, but by category. But basically what these experiments do is you're sitting at a computer and we're recording the brain waves and the electrocardiogram and skin conductance, these types of measures. And so we record the data. After the data has been recorded, the computer then randomly selects a photograph that it shows to the person. So the point here is no one can possibly know what this future picture is going to be. The computer doesn't even know yet. It's a true randomized process with a lot of care goes into what's called sensory leakage. So no one can possibly know what it's going to be, the way this works. And what we basically find, I'm going to make a lot of studies really short here. Basically, we find that the heart is the first to receive the information about the future event, in this case, the picture, right? So it accurately predicts whether it's going to be a negative picture, when it's a negative emotional arousing picture, like a snake striking the screen or a bad guy with a knife at a woman's throat or these kinds of things, or nature scenes and bunny rabbits and, very pleasant, relaxing images. And so the heart's the first to get the information. The heart then measurably sends a different signal to the brain. We can track that and see how it flows through the brain, when, where, and how. And then you get a body response like the gut feeling, and that's when it becomes conscious. So the gut gets the credit a lot of times, or the hair on the back of the neck. But the real flow of this non-local intuitive information is heart, brain, body, if you're paying attention and you have the intuitive feeling, right? So the way I got this published in peer-reviewed scientific journals of the day, this was back in the late 90s, was to say that the heart has access to a field of information outside the boundaries of time and space. Okay, so what's that? And I used to ask that question and I'd get all kinds of answers, but I'm a little more out of the closet these days. Basically saying that's really a lot of the spiritual traditions and philosophies from ancient times on have been right all along. that, because we talk about the heart being that access point to deeper wisdom. And that's why we have these sayings in our language. Ask your heart, play with your heart, right? These kinds of sayings, we intuitively know this in our language. So it's really what some would call your higher self or your spirit or your soul. So what I'm suggesting here is that what we call the energetic heart, and we have a physical heart and an energetic heart. I'm just saying that the energetic heart is real. It has real structure, and it's a very complex system, and it acts as the bridge to our larger self, as like we like to call it here at HeartMath, to take any religious or spiritual connotations out of it for a lot of the audiences that we deal with and talk to. And that's really when we talk about heart intelligence. It's that bridge, if you will, to that larger part of our self, because we're really multidimensional beings. So this is the higher dimensional part of our wholeness that we're accessing through that connection. So we call it the straight line here. By getting coherent, you're opening that channel to your larger self, that straight line connection to who we really are at our higher vibrational level, and then be able to bring that information down into our day-to-day choices and decisions. So this is the way Doc Childrey, who Howard mentioned, the founder of HeartMath, kind of trying to create a simple way of saying it, is that heart intelligence, you can think of that or picture it as the flow of awareness, understanding, and intuitive guidance that we experience when the mind and emotions are brought into a coherent alignment with the energetic heart. Okay, this intelligence steps down the power of love from universal source, or whatever word you want to use there, into our life's interactions in practical, approachable ways, which inform us of the straighter path to our fulfillment. So because we were very practical here at HeartMath, we're really teaching these techniques so we can navigate day-to-day life with more grace, more ease, making better decisions that are really good for us and the wholeness. Okay, so just shifting a little bit now, I'm just going to do a couple of slides here on more of what I would call the relational or the social interactions in that bucket. Now, when we put electrodes on the body to measure the electrocardiogram, or put them on the head to measure the electroencephalograph, as it's called, to measure brain waves. It's called the electrocardiogram for a reason. We're literally measuring electricity. So when we put the electrodes across the chest to measure the ECG, the electrocardiogram, what is being measured there technically is the flow of electrical current. I mean, this is just standard flow of electrons, basically. Okay, now and of course the beating heart is by far the largest source of electrical energy in the body, 100 times greater than like brain waves, for example. And whenever there's a flow of current, this is physics 101, you create a magnetic field. Now those electrodes don't see that. They're measuring current flow. To measure the magnetic fields that are generated, you have to use a different instrument. It's called a magnetometer. Now, one of the qualities of magnetic field is they go through things. That's why cell phones work indoors, right? I mean, and by the way, my first career was a communication engineer. I used to work for Motorola, so I know a fair amount about this. So we use these fields to carry information, right? Our voice, our picture, the text messages is being carried by that field, and it's the magnetic part that goes through the windows and the walls and everything and carries the information from our phone to the cell tower. Same thing. In fact, I believe most technology we invent is mirroring nature, what nature already did. So how do I know this? Well, I can measure it. We can put a magnetometer out in front of the body or anywhere around the body and measure the heart's magnetic field. The same device, you can measure a brainwave about an inch away, external. You don't even have to touch the body. But with the heart, you can keep backing it up many feet and still measure this field. So what we're saying here is this: our personal field environment is for sure carrying information about our emotional states. I suspect a whole lot more from other reasons to say that. So when we decode or demodulate the information being carried by the magnetic component, and measured external to the body, we see that very different vibrational patterns, frequency patterns, this is actual real data from those fields, is very different when we feel appreciation or in that coherent state versus, say, a state of anger. And you can actually do this in real time. You can actually wire it up and see these information patterns changing as we change our inner states and our emotional states. So in other words, we're always broadcasting, literally broadcasting and radiating what we feel. In other words, what you feel doesn't stop at the skin. We are constantly broadcasting it. Whether you put on a fake smile or not, it doesn't matter. The real information is still being broadcast. Now, another question that was pretty cool, to be honest, to see that. And it was actually fairly easy to do. Then the next question was, well, so what? And I'll make a long story short. Basically, our nervous systems are also, not only are we broadcasting, we're also receiving. Our nervous systems are big antennas that are specifically tuned to the frequencies and rhythms of other biologically generated systems, other people, in other words. And so we were able to kind of easily show that our nervous systems are detecting these fields in meaningful and measurable ways from other people that have actual measurable effects on other people. And one of my favorite ones here, this was one of the early studies, it was an independent study, that actually asked this question. And they had 40 people, and they divided them into groups of 4, put them around a table, had them all wired up. And 3 of the 4 were trained 2 weeks prior to the experiment on how to shift into coherence. I mean, these are not lifelong experts, right? They're fairly novice. And the 4th individual in each of the 10 groups didn't know the real purpose of the experiment. And this is actually a very well done experiment. And what the question was, when they randomly signaled the 3 people who had been trained to shift into coherence in different types of intentions and things, it's about 9 steps. I won't go into all that in the protocol. What happened to the naive person who didn't know what the experiment was about? Kind of give it away on the slide here. They measurably became more coherent overall, as statistically as a whole. Not everybody every time, but as an overall effect, it was pretty robust finding. So in other words, when we're coherent, and we are radiating a more coherent field like I just showed you, that has a measurable effect on others around us. Now, I don't have time to go into all the implications of this. I think you can probably figure that out for yourself. But, in our families, when we're interacting with others, whether it's in a meeting or whatever that might be, so what I'm really saying here is that there's an energetic communication that is always going on between people. For most, it's below the conscious level. They're not aware of it, yet it's still impacting whether they believe that person, how they feel about that person. It's just unconsciously. However, we can become more conscious of it, and that's a whole other story. Okay, so now I'm going to shift into trying to stay within my time limit here, the global side of this. So about, I forget how many years ago, 18 years ago now, somewhere in there, we started an initiative out of the research center here called the Global Coherence Initiative. And this is a science-based project that is, we have a lot of collaborators around the world. It's really a co-creative and its intention is to help unite people in heart-focused love and intention, to specifically to facilitate the shift in global consciousness from instability to more and discord to more compassionate care, cooperation, and increasing peace over time. Now, within GCI, I'll give you the high-level perspectives here. First of all, the first one is not a hypothesis. This is absolute fact that the Earth we're constantly bathed in electromagnetic fields. The geomagnetic field, we all know about that, the North Pole, the South Pole, right? The ionosphere, the rhythms within that, and the Earth, and the list goes on. So there's fields within fields. Even the Earth itself is within the magnetic field of the sun. So it's a hierarchy of nested fields that we all live in. And many of these rhythms in the magnetic fields exactly overlap the rhythms in our biology, in our physiology. Our brain waves, our heart rhythms, and so on, our blood pressure rhythms. Well, hundreds of studies on this, well established. Now, what I'm suggesting, and I'm not the first or the only one to suggest this, but that these fields that we all live in not only affect, but they connect all living organisms on the planet. Not just us as humans, but animals, trees, plants, whales. We're all living within and all interconnected in this field, and we all have similar rhythms, actually, across nature. So what I'm saying here is, means we're all living in and connected to this field in a bidirectional way, that we're all contributing our own positive or negative vibrations to the field based on our thoughts, but especially our emotions, right? And the quality of our interactions. We're literally feeding these frequencies literally into the fields, which then communicate them globally. Okay, so if that's true, and I think we have growing evidence that as in fact is correct and true, that when large numbers of people intentionally come together in heart-centered states or coherent states and intentionally radiate love and compassion into the field, we create a more coherent field environment for sure within our own body and locally, but also globally. We're pulsing the global field with a more stable, coherent signal. And that is going to affect and help uplift all other systems within the larger global field. Okay, so how the heck that's a big statement I just made. How do we measure that? How do we prove that? So one of our tools in our toolbox is called the Global Coherence Monitoring System. And these are ultra-sensitive magnetometers that sites that are around the world now. And I tell you, I wish we didn't have to do this ourselves because it is not trivial. I won't go into all the details. So these are magnetometers, just a picture of one here in Boulder Creek, California, on the mountaintop here in our facility. But we have these in places like Saudi Arabia, New Zealand, South Africa, Northern Canada, I'm forgetting, it's Lithuania, kind of around the world. And it's the only, at least that I know of, time synchronized, ultra sensitive, networked magnetometer system like this that's all calibrated and everything. That's specifically designed to measure the oscillating of the vibrating frequencies in the field. Lots of magnetometers out there, but they don't do what we're doing here. Okay, sorry, too many clicks, but the second newest tool in our toolbox is the Global Consciousness Project 2.0, which I'll talk more about in a minute, but also the Global Tree Monitoring System. So this is a project that we're really just getting established. So we're monitoring the electrical activity of trees all around the world. We have about 100, close to 100 trees now. Some in Australia. Thank you for those that might be listening there in Australia, but all around the world. Because as I said, all living systems, right? So this is a way of, trees make a great participant because they stay put and they really don't mind if we put a couple of electrodes in them to measure their electrical activity. And trees have amazingly dynamic electrical activity. And the voltages they produce are in the same range as human heartbeats. It's amazing. They're in the millivolt range. And nobody yet that I've run into can explain how trees are doing this and how this works, but they clearly are. So this is a global system for looking at what we feed the field and how it might be impacting or detected by and affecting the trees globally. Those are research questions yet to come. Another awesome tool, I think, in our toolbox is the Global Coherence app. So any of you who may not have that, please download it. This is a neat app. Not only does it allow you to measure your own individual personal level of heart coherence, but it also lets us look at the group level coherence. So you can create your own group. So we have the global group, so people all over the world who are participating. Like Deborah led us through a care focus. We do those every month around full moons. So people all over the world come in at a synchronized time, and we can see that there's a map in it that shows you where people are around the world who are right there with you right now, adding love and compassion to the field. So it does both personal, but also the group's level of coherence. So for research, it also gives us an awesome tool to be able to know how much coherence are we actually feeding the field, how many people are involved and where are they in that coherence level that we're feeding the field. And then, of course, we do a fair amount to create connection and community because it's all about us. It's about you, contributing, adding your love, your compassion into the planetary field. Okay, so I'll just do a quick overview of the newest project, the Global Consciousness Project 2.0. And I suspect a lot of you listening are probably heard of GCP or what we now lovingly refer to as the Global Consciousness Project 1. And so this is a network of what are called random number generators. And that can sound all complex, and it actually is complex to make a truly random number generator, which basically means you cannot possibly predict the future behavior based on the past. And it's actually there's a lot of serious technology that goes into making these things. But at the end of the day, they're pretty simple. The way to think of them is as an electronic coin flipper. We flip a coin 100 times. On average, we're going to get, unless the coin's not weighted properly or something, you're going to get 50 tails, 50 heads. But when you do that, you might get 8, 10 heads in a row or tails in a row or repeating sequences. Okay, so RNGs are basically electronic versions of that, only it's ones and zeros instead of heads or tails, and they just do it really fast. Okay, so what led to GCP? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. So in GCP, well, let me say a little history here. GCP1 was, and I'll show you a picture of them in the next slide, conceived of and started by Dr. Roger Nelson at Princeton University, and they were doing a lot of experiments back then. This is many years ago, close to 30 years ago, showing where their interests were, can human consciousness, energetically affect the physical world. And they did a lot of cool experiments to demonstrate that yes, it can. And one of those was the effects on random number generators. Can we intentionally cause them to be biased one way or the other, more heads or tails or ones or zeros? And that led to the idea of, can we use these devices spread around the world, sending their data back to a central server, all time synchronized, to measure global consciousness or global fields. That was the genesis of this. And in GCP2, well, let me back up. So Dr. Nelson approached me a few years back and said, I'm really retiring now. He'd already officially retired, but I'm really retiring. Will you take over the project? And I reluctantly agreed after about a year of saying no and trying to get him to do other people to do it, because I knew what was involved. And if we were going to do it, it needed a redesign because it was very clunky and hard to be a participant in GCP1. So we designed a completely new device that's specifically designed to work with GCP2 that makes it really easy for people to participate, for citizen scientists to host these. And we have evidence that the more RNGs there are in the global network, the more the sensitivity to detect the effects of global consciousness and so on. So we put 4 independent random number generators on each one of the GCP2 devices and so on. Now, just a little history. Dr. Nelson is a picture of Roger. Conducted many hundreds of experiments, and he had 500 of what he called formal experiments. And that just means that it was registered in a public website before an event took place. These would be things that you might know about, an upcoming global meditation or these kinds of things, but also tragedies that you can't predict, like an earthquake, these types of things, terrorist attacks, that were all predicted and how they would be analyzed and all this ahead of time. And after the 500 formal events, he did an analysis of all those events and found statistically that the odds against chance that this is a real measured effect are over 1 trillion to 1. I mean, this is you just don't hear about these kind of powerful statistics very often. 1 trillion to 1. So this is obviously a very real effect, that when basically an event happens that hits the media, that evoke a lot of people to pay attention and feel something. And that's the critical part, that it causes a coherence, if you will, amongst these devices that are spread around the world, hundreds to thousands of miles apart usually. In other words, what that means is they start flipping ones or zeros at the same time globally, even though they're not in no way they're random devices that shouldn't be doing that. Now, when my favorite study or sub-analysis that Roger did was when he looked at those events and rated them for their level of love and compassion. So like a global Earth Day, or these, organized large-scale meditations that are really focused on love or peace, these types of things would be rated as high love and compassion. In the medium category are events that evoke a lot of emotion, but not a lot of love and compassion. Super Bowls, World Cups, these types of things, right? And in the low category, this is terrorist attacks, shootings that got a lot of mass attention and emotional turmoil and so on. And what you see here is, and that this is so important about why love connects us, is those that have high levels of love and compassion have a significantly greater effect on cohering the global consciousness field as detected by these devices than the other types of emotions. So in other words, what we have here is the best scientific instrument I know of to measure our you can think of as our extended or our collective consciousness, and how that when enough of us feel something at the same time, that affects the global consciousness field and can be measured. So I'll just show you a couple of recent examples here. This is some GCP2. So the way to read these charts is that the red line, you expect it to be around zero, just kind of fluctuating around zero. That would be the randomness within the network. And when the red line starts going up or down, either way is a type of coherence in the network. That means that they're flipping ones or zeros or patterns of ones and zeros at the same time throughout the global network. And the blue line is a statistical line that says if it crosses the blue line, it was a significant effect in the network. So this is the result of the Middle East conflict that started on October 7th across 24 hours that you see here. So that created enough coherence emotionally that it affected the network. Now, kind of related to that, is it turned out we had agreed to measure the effect of a series of meditations from a group that produced the movie called The One Field. And they were doing monthly meditations. Yeah, so we had looked at 6 of them. This is before the conflict started. This is the One Field producers are actually in Israel. And so we kind of changed the perspective. Now, what is neat about this one is there had been once a month, 6 months of people practicing using the Global Coherence app to get coherent. And we always kept the intention the same across these 7 months of the events, which was to add love and compassion to the planetary consciousness field with the intention of helping raise the baseline consciousness of humanity. So that was always the intention. So because of the conflict, we changed things. And on the 7th evening, this is the result that you're seeing on the screen here. So this was a global community. It was a hybrid event with a group actually in Jerusalem in an auditorium, and then an online community so about 2,000 people here. And we can see on the slide here when the meditation begins, we see a huge significant event. Now this is relevant because one of the new hypotheses in GCP2 is that it's not just about the number of people, which clearly there is a relationship between the number of people involved and the size of the effect size in the global field. That the point here, and the thing that we're actually starting to test now, is that a much smaller group of highly coherent and heart coherent focused individuals can have as large, maybe even larger effects than hundreds of thousands or millions who are kind of just scattered, in their emotions, like after a terrorist attack or a start of a war, these types of things. And so this data is certainly supportive of that. And here's another very recent example. And excuse me. I have to say, I was honored to be invited to this. This was a global spirituality manifesto and conduct that was hosted, put on by the government of India, but it was hosted at the HeartMath Institute's headquarters near Hyderabad, India. And so this was spiritual leaders from traditions from all around the world who were speaking at this with the intention to really bring the spiritual traditions together with more acceptance and more, kind of working together towards global peace. In fact, the theme of the conference was from inner peace to world peace, was the theme of this meeting. So there are over 300, spiritual leaders from all around the world at this 3-day event. And on the Sunday of the event, the day started with a meditation, a heartfulness focused meditation. And there were about 60,000 people who were participating in that meditation. So we looked at that, and here again, we see a big, beautiful result right after that meditation started, kind of mirroring the one I just showed you. So again, that's a relatively small audience when you think about terrorist attacks and starts of wars and things, but showing that we really, a relatively small group, much larger than the other one, but when we're coherent and focused in the heart, that we can have pretty large effects on the global field. So I'm going to end this by suggesting that together, when we open our hearts and we can create an effective, peaceful momentum for getting along with each other. And that this is, as Howard alluded to this as well, This is a necessary step to free up our collective creativity for coherent solutions and intuitive guidance to manifest, to create a world that we can all thrive in while respecting our differences. So the last thing I would just say here is that my call to action, I guess you could call it, would be to pause whenever you can throughout the day and every day, and just ask yourself, what am I feeding the field? Right? What am I really feeding the field? Is it love, compassion, patience? Well, or are we feeding the field anxiety or frustration or impatience? And if you find that you're on one of those lower vibrational emotions, literally, just shift, take a few breaths to the heart area, and activate like what Debbie did earlier today. Just, bring in and activate a feeling of appreciation or compassion or care. And let's all come together and feed the field more of these uplifting, literally frequencies and vibrations that help us and also help others in the world. So again, I'd like to thank you as well, Dennis, for the invitation and the honor to speak to people here in this wonderful event. I know you've got a lot of really awesome speakers lined up. It's a lot of friends of mine. It's great to hear you've got Urban Laszlo and others like that are mentors of mine and people I really look up to as well. So thank you for putting this together and the invitation.
Oh, thank you so much, Rollin. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and what a wonderful presentation, and what a way to start this 2-day weekend. That was just happened to be that I was trying to find a place for you people, and Sunday morning was taken up by the Californian Institute with Our Cosmic Journey to Gaia Self, and then this space was available. So, and it happened to be at the start of the weekend, and in hindsight, I thought, well, what a wonderful way to begin with the heart. I think we should all begin with the heart. Maybe every day we should begin with the heart.
Absolutely.
And so the next speaker, I'm going to pass.
Can I add one thing, Dennis? I'm sorry, just real quick, and then I have to go. So I know a lot of the audience here is from Australia, and Australia is an area we need more of the RNGs for the global network. So anybody who's interested in maybe being a host, you can go to the website or get a hold of Dennis. He can let me know. Just let us know, because we would love to have some more hosts. In fact, we want a cluster of them in Australia. So just an invite I meant to do there. So thank you, and I'll be quiet now. And in fact, I gotta go here soon. And
okay, all right.
Thank you.
I'll just say before I introduce Catherine, just an aside. I went to my GP last week. He told me he's writing a science fiction book in which these extraterrestrials land on Earth, and all the humans are waiting to make contact with them, but they ignore the humans and go off to the forest, and they want to talk to the trees. And I think, I was wondering, if we plant more trees, does that enable increasing global coherence? I wonder, the more trees, the happier the planet. Now I want to introduce Catherine, who was introduced to me by Peter Story of HeartMath Australia. And she's a trainer of HeartMath in Australia. She happens to be in the same town as I am. And I understand that Catherine was going to talk at this point about what's been going on in HeartMath Australia and what's been her personal experience. Later on in the session, before we have a discussion, Catherine may come back and do a heart lock-in, which is just a very short meditation. So Catherine, over to you. Can you share your screen and present what you want to do?
Well, thank you for the introduction. I don't need to share my screen. Can everyone hear me okay? Right. Yes?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Wonderful. So thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of this, and it really highlights what Rollin and Deborah and Ros and Howard were saying, is when we get groups of people together with this common higher intention, and we can join together from that space of appreciation and gratitude. We actually are making a difference even without doing anything else. And I'm here to speak from an Australian perspective of being a HeartMath trainer. And as Dennis mentioned, we didn't find this out until after the introduction, but we're literally in the same town, in little coastal town of Fremantle, Western Australia, which is also the land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. And I wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge their stewardship of the lands and the waterways here. So to begin this short session today, I've been asked to speak from my perspective, but I wanted to start with the words from someone who we all know very well and who had a powerful compassion and passion for bridging science and our spirit, which really is what this summit is all about, is bringing those aspects together into a unified whole so we can make better decisions moving forward for planetary health and the health of the human species and beyond. So these words, that we are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos, that we're souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music. So in this context, in this session today, I would just slightly change that last sentence and say, our hearts are the instruments through which our souls play their music. And the frequency that tunes us most directly into the cosmos is, of course, what we've been talking about already this morning, which is that state of coherence, the 0.1 hertz, that comes from the practice of cultivating coherent heart rhythms, as all of the founders of HeartMath have talked about this morning. And to me, that's why HeartMath Institute are contributing in such a powerful way to awakening the heart of humanity, is that these tools start to tune us up to, as Rollin said, our larger selves and through to that sense of unification. So HeartMath's actually had a presence in Australia, as Howard mentioned, since 2001, where my colleague Peter Story, the Macquarie Institute, who was really passionate about mindfulness and what he called the appropriate use of technology to support healthy business and organisation, he reached out to Howard, and Howard actually came over and ran those first trainings to create those first HeartMath practitioners here in Australia. And now fast forward to today, we have over 1,000 HeartMath practitioners in Australia and New Zealand. And Peter Story and Maria Thompson of Macquarie Institute are still holding the torch for HeartMath Australia all these decades later. And that's one of the things I love about the HeartMath Institute generally, is that you see the same faces and names over decades that have been committed to this vision. And Willow and I, my beautiful partner, we run our work together, and we headed over and worked with Peter and Maria in New South Wales a decade ago in 2013 and trained up to become first coaches and then trainers. And Willow and I came from sort of a medical approach and a spiritual approach as well. So I was a physiotherapist, Willow had been an emergency nurse, but we were also supporting psychedelic assisted therapy. And we saw with HeartMath this going straight to the core that bridged these approaches to make them more impactful. So we've been teaching now for the last decade, and the honour that we've had is that we've been in quite a sort of contained geographical location. And what that means is we've been able to see changes over time for a large number of people and keep in contact with individuals that we've worked with, and to see those changes that have been taking place for them through consistent practice of these tools over time. And what I personally have noticed, which lines up with what's already been shared, is that there seems to be these layers of transformation that naturally happen when we use these tools and the technology to bring more coherence to our own hearts. So the first layer is the impact on our nervous system. So people will often come to us for help. and they're in a crisis of some description. They may have challenges with their health, their relationships, a loss of some kind, or they're in a transition point. And they're here to just get some help. And the first thing that using these tools does is that it helps to down-regulate our nervous system. So that sympathetic aspect of our nervous system, the activation point. It helps to soothe that. And through that dialing down of the nervous system, you can start to change the pace at which you move through a day. Start to slow down a little, have a little bit more space to make different decisions. And what happens when people start to down-regulate is that they start to feel that they have more choice around their behaviours and their actions and their lifestyle. Concurrently, you're also focusing a lot on the emotions of gratitude, appreciation, kindness, and compassion, because they're essential to generate that coherent heart rhythm. So as people are starting to become more familiar with deliberately generating these emotions, they become more grateful humans. So we automatically become more grateful, more gracious, and we can start to see and become more sensitive to beauty. And when we become more sensitive to beauty, we want to nourish that beauty because we see it and we want to increase it around us. So that makes us become more self-responsible. So we become more responsible for our own emotions, or Rollin called what we're feeding the field. Our personal integrity increases because we start to become aware of where our actions and our behaviours are not aligned with our values, with those noble human qualities like compassion and kindness and care. And so through this alignment and taking more responsibility for our actions, we become naturally more authentic people. And being more authentic means that we can be more satisfied with our lives, that we're making a more meaningful contribution because we are being more of ourselves. And we become more trustworthy people because we're more naturally centered in our heart and our care. And with all this focus over time, then that just naturally activates our heart intelligence. So we start to have more of a reciprocal relationship with our heart. Those little bubblings up of insights, those wise whispers of the heart, heart-based decisions. Perhaps you make a decision to apologize or clean up a relationship where you may have left it. Maybe you say no to something instead of yes, and you start to line up with that deeper or larger part of yourself. And I would use that word that it's lining us up through the heart to our soul and spiritual directive, which is unifying. So it's a special transformation that I've seen with individuals over time, which aligns totally to awakening the heart of humanity and taking us in the direction of being a healthier presence on the planet. And the wonderful thing about this is that sometimes we might have a huge spiritual breakthrough, and then we try and live up to this breakthrough that we have. Whereas with this approach, you're naturally evolving, changing your perception, you're bringing your fully integrated self forward as you move along. And so this is where, yes, Dennis?
I thought you were wrapping up because
I've just got a couple more minutes to go.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
So that's what I've seen from my perspective with the work with the HeartMath Institute that Willow and I have done. And Australians can be a pretty tough crowd. We can be quite cynical, although that has shifted a little bit through all the times over the last few years. But this approach can meet people really well where they are and help to provide a bridge towards these healthier decisions. And so in Australia now, myself and Willow and a small group of HeartMath practitioners have been getting together over the last few months. And our vision is to actually start to provide a coordinated central hub for all HeartMath practitioners in the Asia Pacific region to come together and to come together in a higher coordinated vision around this heart intelligence and our affect radiating our heart from this region of the world. So that's all in its inception right now. So if you want to learn more about that, and as we move along with that project, then please feel free to email me directly through the Reverence Events website, or there's a link in the bio from the summit. And I wanted to leave you with this, is that I hope you are inspired to tune up your own hearts, the instruments through which your soul plays its music. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I must apologize to the audience about my learning about how to use webinar software. I think I'm getting the hang of it now. But so that was great, and it's really good to have a hub for HeartMath in the Asia region. I think, as they were often told, 2/3 of the world's population, growing economies, and there's a growing need for that, because as we go down the technology road, we also need to bring along the heart. And as
I wanted to say at the end as well, just so everyone knows, is that Willow and I have one of those trees hooked up in our backyard as part of the Tree Interconnectivity Project, Joy the Jacaranda. And we have our event space right next to it where we do monthly sessions. So I'm really interested now. We've got quite a bit of data that we're going to report back when we've been running those sessions and see if there's any shift in the coherence.
Start measuring the blossoms on the
yeah,
on the jacaranda, see if it's becoming happier.
exactly.